I was challenged with one of the things that almost every leader hates, which is evaluating your team and doing annual reviews.
Now, I know the term is pretty closely tied to the SaaS industry, the software as a service industry. Makes sense, and Salesforce is the one to inaugurate it. Is customer success a skill set and a discipline and a job title that I can find in any industry? Am I going to find customer successful roles if I'm in maybe traditional consumer packaged goods companies, or if I'm in live events companies? Am I going to find similar disciplines or those skill sets or titles I want associated with my career if I'm in those industries?
So it's certainly like 100% tied to SaaS. Like you really like the evolution is very clear. Like basically you can't have a subscription business without eventually having customer success.
Mhm.
You may start out without it, and your business model may be, for instance, if it's direct to consumer, it may be something that you adopt later as you start to go up market and engage with bigger companies. And maybe what you're to see is, instead of in that sort of an example, a direct customer success team, it would be partner success. And so, your question is interesting because customer success is applicable to almost any business. I mean, in our company, we've worked with everyone from GE Digital down to textbook companies. You wouldn't expect to see, like a textbook company embarking in customer success, but the reality is, if you want to have a recurring relationship with your customer, whether you call it customer success or not, you're using the same principles. And so it's not solely limited to SaaS. It's actually evolving and spreading into many, many, many different industries. Now, does it have that same name? No. So you pointed out, like, the event industry. Probably not going to see a customer success manager title, but you would see like an events manager. And what is an events manager doing? They're doing essentially customer success. They're making sure that that event goes off flawlessly according to the specifications that you've given them for it. So, in a lot of cases, you're seeing account manager roles. You're seeing any sort of a role where they're working with the engagements and making sure that they go off according to plan. That's essentially customer success, just by a different name. And the good news is all the skills are transferable. So, while it may be a leap to say you could go from being an event manager to a customer success manager at, for instance, like a complex ERP solution, the same basic skills are required. You need to have good emotional intelligence, you need to have good people skills, you need to be able to actively listen and really understand what your customers are asking. You need to be more consultative, so able to kind of really pick away at what they're saying and understand not necessarily what they're telling you they want, but what they actually want based on what you're hearing, and be able to feed that back to them. So yes, it's broadly applicable, and yes, you would be able to find it as a career path in far more companies than you would think, as long as you don't limit yourself to the title of customer success manager.
It sounds like the kind of thing that maybe you'll only find the title in this one industry, but the skill set is very broad. If you take a customer success class, you can apply that to being a really great account manager or a partner manager or a seller or anything like that. You guys have this chart I found, which is the top skills for a customer success job, and you divide them into 5 categories. You've got emotional intelligence, people and teamwork, drive, entrepreneurship and strategy, and having certain behaviors like maturity and trust. Can you talk about those 5 things and how they really apply particularly to your industry? Because like we said, those 5 things seem like they can be applied to a lot of different jobs. Again, that's
Yeah,
intelligence, people and teamwork, drive, entrepreneurship and strategy, and behaviors.
sure. So you're talking about the customer success competency model. And so what we did, well, actually, what I was kind of forced to do was to take a document that I've been dragging around with me for, I don't know, the better part of 20 years, through all the different roles that I've had in my own career history, I basically built out this competency model because I've, for the bulk of my career, been involved in all the things that you would term customer success, about 25 years of doing it before they stuck the name on it. And so what ended up happening is, as I progressed into leadership roles, I was challenged with one of the things that almost every leader hates, which is evaluating your team and doing annual reviews. There is probably no worse thing that you have to do, particularly in a large company when there's a lot of software around it, and there's no model for evaluating what your team should be doing versus what they are doing. So I ended up taking a bunch of different things and synthesizing them and putting this together. And then, of course, now what you're looking at, the customer success competency model, has been fed through like a behavioral psychologist and a couple of different L&D consultants that helped with competency models and making it sort of more rich than my rough and ready model was. And what we really found was that, yes, those skills are not something that is solely like the domain of a customer success manager. And that's why when I talked about broadly transferable skills, customer success really leverages skills from a ton of different disciplines, which is both its strength and also the challenge. So, for somebody that's interested in moving into customer success, I almost always find myself telling them that you have more skills than you actually realize that you do, and they're skills that are required for the job. And then, when you start looking at sort of the flip side of this, when you're working with companies and they're looking to hire people, you kind of have to like get them to focus on like, what do you really need? Like, what do you really need and what can you build? Because the average person that's going to pursue a role in customer success is going to have a variety of the skills that you just mentioned in those 5 different disciplines, but they're probably not going to have all of them. But the good news is the bulk of them can be learned. Some are harder than others to teach. Particularly some of the soft skills become more challenging. But the good news is, most of them can be learned. And the reality is, you don't have to possess all of them to be a great customer success manager. It's just, when you hold up something like a competency manual, this is the ideal, right? And then, that document actually kind of goes through and explains what they are and how they're applicable in each one of the different levels in your career. So as you progress in your career path, it's going to look different. If you're an entry-level customer success manager versus a senior leader, your grasp and your approach and your use of things like emotional intelligence will vary greatly. But that skills model is really sort of, it's the ideal, and it's something that, particularly for folks that are looking to get into customer success, they can look at and say, like, where do I fit? What do I have? So it's a self-evaluation tool. It's a training tool. It's something that we use to build all of our curriculum so that we were sure that as we were delivering different levels of training, that we were giving folks exposure to these things and teaching them, not always directly. So, that's one of the differences in sort of how we approach training folks. Is it's very much vocational training. It's very practical and tactical. Because if I told you that you had to sit through a 90-minute course on emotional intelligence, you probably are not going to note that as like the high point of your day. So instead, what we've done is we've worked to take the concepts and the practices and wrap them into the actual of doing the job. So specific activities. And so it's basically kind of like a stealth approach to teaching you about emotional intelligence and some of the other skills that are on the competency manual. But it is the ideal, and it is something that when you aspire to that and you are self-critical and you look at it, it can really help you because you can identify the gaps in your own sort of quiver of skills and begin to improve yourself by pursuing opportunities to upgrade your skills in those areas.